Listen to Times Radio on your smart speaker. Just say, play Times Radio.
Early breakfast with Rosie Wright on Times Radio with Elevon, your world of payments. Find out more at elevon.co.uk.
It is 17 minutes past 5. Here to go through the papers with me this morning is the barrister, broadcaster, futurist, president of Octopus TV, Andrew Eborn. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning, Rosie. Always a delight to join you.
I mentioned some of the front pages already, these Mandelson emails adding pressure on Starmer. I mean, the Daily Mail just put it as a meltdown. The Mail have been far from flattering over the last couple of weeks, and the Prime Minister's given them quite a lot of excuse to criticise some of his decisions and his judgment. How serious a situation would you say we're in? Or the Prime Minister's in?
I think he's in a pretty serious situation. I mean, his government is unravelling faster than a cheap suit, isn't it? And you always know as soon as somebody stands up at Prime Minister question time and says, he's got my full support, that's the death knell, isn't it?
But you don't expect that if it comes from the Prime Minister.
I know, but it is extraordinary, isn't it? And finding out what he knew when and how much information he knew about Peter Mandelson and the various relationships with Jeffrey Epstein, all of this will be unravelling very, very quickly. And the reality is there can be more and more of these things. Everything, I always say that everything you've ever written, everything you've ever said, every photo you've had with somebody next to you will come out at some stage. So it's not a surprise. These WhatsApp messages with terrible comments about Diane Abbott, it was inevitable that these would come out at some stage. And I can tell you, there will be more. And he's going to have to deal with that all the time.
But Andrew, I feel that is something you learn at school, isn't it?
Yes.
That whatever you could text, tweet, post on social media, imagine it could be on front page of the newspaper the next day, and how uncomfortable would you feel about that? It seems hugely naive for these politicians. Okay, this was 8 years ago. But for politicians to be caught out by this time and time again, I mean, private, personal, abhorrent thoughts, you think should stay private rather than being published in any form.
You're absolutely right, and you're right, it should be taught at school. I always say history repeats itself because people don't learn the lessons from history. And I can tell you, they should be looking out. Look out what you said all those years ago. It will come out. Control the narrative. But I can guarantee there's going to be more of these. But Paul Overland's resignation after the departures, obviously, of Lord Mandelson and Angela Rayner, it means the PM has lost 3 senior figures in controversial circumstances since the relaunch, and that's what they called it, this month.
Yeah. There's a really interesting piece inside the Times today written by Patrick Maguire. He says there's echoes of Boris in this attempt to sort of steady the ship, sort of saying, Keir Starmer's trying something very uncannily similar, says Patrick, to what Boris Johnson did when he tried to sort of cling on at the end. But it seems remarkable we're even having these sort of conversations now. This also, of course, could be overshadowed when Donald Trump arrives a little bit later. More on that to come. I did enjoy the cartoon in the Times of the plane landing in Windsor with a little speech bubble saying, brace.
Yes, hilarious, isn't it? It's wonderful. And he's coming with his tech team, basically some of the richest, the most powerful people in the world, the American architects of artificial intelligence, my pet baby revolution. There's going to be Sam Altman's going to be there, chief executive of OpenAI and maker of ChatGPT, Ruth Porat, president of Google, and Satya Nadella, chief executive of Microsoft, as well as the chief executive of NVIDIA. They make the most coveted AI chips. It's going to be fascinating to see what's going to happen. Donald Trump always likes to do a deal, announce that. Let's see what happens there. I will be down in Windsor. I've been invited to a very special dinner. I can't disclose all the details, but yeah, I will be down there. I'll report next time I'm on.
That is very typical of you, Andrew, to suggest you've had an exclusive invitation and not say any more. I'm going to be at a very different event. I'll be at the Stop Trump protest, which is taking place tomorrow evening, not in Windsor, in Westminster. And Jeremy Corbyn's going to be speaking, the Labour MP, Bell Ribeiro Aide. We will see what kind of reception the US president
I'll
gets.
tell you what, I live, as you know, right in by close to Regent's Park, and they've got Winfield House where presidents previously stayed. The last time they had a protest, one of the great banners had a sign saying, "We will overcome," which I thought was quite clever.
Right, yes, I can imagine. I mean, Donald Trump is largely going to be protected from protest and protesters. He's not doing a sort of sort of almost public meet and greet in the same way that President of France, Emmanuel Macron, did only a few weeks ago now. Let's take a look at a bit more government policy, shall we? Inside the Times today, and some of the papers have led on this actually as well, the Hillsborough law is going to force officials to tell the truth. The government, prompted by the infected blood scandal, the post office scandal, is putting forward legislation that includes a legal duty of candour for public officials. Tell us what's happening, Andrew.
Oh, this is absolutely right. And this is something I've been campaigning for myself for a long time. I always say that sunlight is the best disinfectant. And we've had a number of cases, including things like the post office scandal, infected blood. Sometimes it's taken an ITV series, you might remember the Bates versus the post office, to actually highlight this scandal. What's going to happen now is campaigners for what they call a Hillsborough law have warned that legislation must not be diluted and ministers should ensure that no one will ever have to suffer like we did. What's going to happen is the government announced this long-awaited bill which would create this statute which does include a legal duty of candour for public officials, and quite right too. I think this is what the public need. I always say that trust comes in on foot and leaves on horseback, and the more of these scandals that are covered up and you find out that people are not reporting them on time or they've been buried for whatever reason, the more that trust gets diluted. So I think this is a very good step, and as I say, something I've been campaigning for a long time.
Yeah, there'll be criminal sanctions included in the law to punish sort of any breaches of that duty, the duty being that public officials have to act with honesty and integrity at all times. I mean, it's a tragic state of affairs that needs to be enshrined in law. Another legal duty says that ministry officials would require public bodies involved in inquests and inquiries to ensure their spending on lawyers was always proportionate. You know, we have these very lengthy inquiries that take so long. They're hugely expensive. And actually, you've got people involved in the middle of one of these scandals, let's say infected blood scandal, the post office, waiting years for some form of justice. So there'll be more on that.
It's appalling.
There'll be more on that on Times Radio a little bit later this morning on Breakfast. Now, while Jaguar Land Rover are finding that business operations are completely stifled right now by the latest hack, Inside the Times this morning, they're reporting there's been another hack, not of Land Rover Jaguar, but here hackers stole the customer data from Gucci and Alexander McQueen. What happened?
Well, I always say that data is the new currency, isn't it? And we hear all the time about tech and relying on tech and access to that data. And what's happened here is hackers are stealing customer data. They've stolen customer data from Gucci and Alexander McQueen and other famous brands, and millions, they say, of personal records belonging to the customers of Gucci, Balenciaga, and other Balenciaga and Alexander McQueen have been stolen by these hackers. This data includes names, contact details, addresses, birth dates, and purchase histories. It is appalling, and we keep hearing about all these hacks. And what they are, there's a ransom, a reported figure of €750,000 in Bitcoin for return of the data. Apparently, talks broke down with the hackers called Shiny Hunters, and this is what's going to happen. We're seeing all of the time these sort of access to data, and apparently the data related to 7.4 million unique email addresses.
Yeah, I mean, how can companies, it feels like there's been, particularly with what happened with M&S a few months ago, then Jaguar Land Rover, there's been a sort of increasing or an exaggerated trend, this happening far more often and causing more problems for businesses. And what can you do to better protect yourself from this happening?
Well, so often it's actually human error. Remember, lots of the times they talk about these hacks and so on and so forth. The hackers are getting more and more sophisticated. And what companies tend to do is employ people who used to be hackers because they know all the tricks and everything else. But it's also not just the software that's failing. AI, as you know, is getting stronger and stronger, adding to those sort of security levels. But so often it can be a human error somewhere in the equation. You need to look at somebody gives out their email address or somebody pretends to be from HR and wants a password reset. These are often the situations. Again, we need to work out how did this data breach happen. And I think that needs to, basically, they always say lessons need to be learned. Well, they do. And we need to work out what sort of security issues are being dealt with and how they're being dealt with so that other companies can avoid these issues.
Well, of course, yeah. And in the business news, we'll see the problems that Jaguar Land Rover are currently facing. A couple of things that we should just finish with, Andrew. Coldplay. I haven't been. I'm very jealous for everyone who has managed to go. Their tour has been absolutely stunning in terms of success. Not for the couple who found themselves embroiled in that kiss cam disaster, but they've got another 138 concerts to come. That makes the tour the highest grossing and the best attended. I mean, they've outperformed Taylor Swift.
It is quite extraordinary, and you're right, avoid that kiss cam at all costs. Chris Martin, the band singer, he announced during the band's recent run of gigs at Wembley, they're going to plan to extend the Music of the Spheres tours with a further 138 concerts in 2027. What happens is that the tour, which began in 2022, has clocked up more than 211 shows so far, and it's grossed an estimated £1 billion. That's £1 billion. It's the second highest grossing of all time, above Elton John's Farewell Yellow Brick Road tour as well. With his other 138 concerts making an existing tour an average of about £5 million every gig, is going to put them above Taylor Swift on that basis. You might remember, I don't know if you saw her Eras tour, that swept through Britain last year. That's estimated to have grossed more than £2 billion with its 149 shows, and that was an average of 11 million per concert. So interesting stuff. But yes, it will make Coldplay the best of all time.
Yeah, I know, it's interesting. I wonder if Coldplay is one of the things that makes Britain great. I'm talking about that because there's a debate about what makes Britain great, and a couple of the things, this is according to GQ magazine, that make the list are baked beans and sarcasm. Also, the locks of Scotland and Sir David Attenborough. Which sort of big things about Britain would you say encapsulate its greatness?
I tell you what, we've got a wonderful sense of humour, some of which is not understood around the world, which is why British comedy doesn't always necessarily travel. But certainly baked beans, sarcasm, the locks of Scotland, Sir David Attenborough, various other things. What they did, they asked a number of leading people, including sportsman Anthony Joshua and Ian Wright, and actors Brian Cox and Andrew Garfield, for sweet to nostalgic, silly, sublime and absurd. What's so great about Britain? So this is what they're looking at. We've conquered the world, he said. You come to Greece and they're like, Alexander the Great, be proud, innit? It's unbelievable. What an achievement. That's what the heavyweight boxer was sort of saying. They basically said there's nothing for Britain to be embarrassed about, as he identified David Lloyd health clubs and the Badger pub in Watford as the things he missed most when he's abroad. But also people like Dame Emma Thompson, they say she's a national treasure. And people say that Andy Murray and Lewis Hamilton need to get more love. They look at all these sort of things. It's a lovely article, but reminding people the great thing about being British. One of the things they also talked about on the food side is that basically Cox, he did 79, he declared that cooked breakfast with 2 slices of black pudding is unbeatable.
I'm not sure about that. And they've also got a picture of Mr. Blobby as part of their feature, which I would be so terrified of watching a child that I wouldn't put that myself in the list of what made Britain great. But there you go. Andrew, thank you so much. Andrew Eborn, barrister and broadcaster, going through the papers with me.
Across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio.